Hi, my name is Crystal. I am a lover of stories. I've been doing book content for about 5 years, and I think it's time that I make the move to booktube. This is the booktube newbie tag. Well, I've been creating book content for going on 5 years, and I want to be way more intentional in 2025 and moving forward about creating a community. And long form content seemed like a no brainer. I have a couple of minutes with my community on different apps with short form content, and you guys really don't get to know me or the inner workings of why I love the books or what my day to day as a reader looks like. So I wanted to be able to provide that for you guys here on BookTube. My first run in with BookTube was maybe 15 years ago. I think it was before BookTube even existed. It was like the peak of the beauty guru time here on YouTube. And there was one beauty influencer who had a book page as well. It was called Gliterature. I wish I could think of her name. I'll have to tag it below. But I thought that the concept was so cool. She talked about the books that she was reading, she gave recommendations, and I thought I'm really enjoying this content, but never did it occur to me until the height of the pandemic that I could do that myself. So I'm just really looking forward to building a community here on YouTube because I know from a lot of mutuals that you tend to build different communities on different apps. So I'm so looking forward to the friendships and relationships that I can build here on YouTube. There's so many things about myself that I feel like aren't known on my other platforms. I am a mom, I'm a wife, and my day to day is literally weaving reading in and out throughout the other things that I have to get done. So I do a lot of audiobooks, I do a lot of ebooks after, it's late at night and I'm putting my kids to bed. I just want to maybe do some vlogs, just show you guys the day to day more. And you can't really do that on other platforms so that you guys can see, maybe get some tips and tricks on how I get so much reading done in a day. And it's literally my favorite thing to do. So the fact that I can come on here and talk to you all, a community of like-minded people about the things that I love to do, is just so exciting, and I'm really looking forward to this journey. So if you know anything about me or if you've taken a look at my shelf so far, I am an advocate for reading diversely. Not only are they some of the best stories on the planet, you can also change your worldview, look at other people's perspectives, grow empathy, and become an advocate for others by reading diversely. Even though I mostly read fantasy and sci-fi, it's such a parallel to the world that we live in, and the inspiration that these authors have about the stories that they're creating come from our world. I just love that so much. I love the stories themselves. I love the entertaining parts. I love the heart-wrenching parts and how they are a mirror to our world. And I love being an advocate for these authors and helping support getting their stories out because they're so needed and they deserve for their stories to be read and to be heard. I just realized that I didn't put Chain Gang All Stars back after I filmed, so sorry to that man. What else am I looking to bring to YouTube? Just my personality. There's so much about me beyond reading, and I feel like they also go hand in hand with why I love reading so much. I am a nerd through and through. I love manga, I love comic books, I love musicals, and I think just showing a little bit more about myself in these long form videos will be much easier. It'll come to me much more naturally. And I think it's going to be more enjoyable. This seems so much more personable, like I'm just sitting down talking to some friends. And I think the more that I enjoy something, the more likely I am to continue doing it. So that's a part of why I'm doing this as well. I'm excited to get to the stories that I want to read in 2025, excited to share those stories with you guys. More of like a day-to-day on how I'm reading, what I'm reading, how I'm feeling about what I'm reading, because I have feelings throughout the entire book, but then when I sit down to film a 2-minute video on TikTok, there's only so much that I can say, and there's only so much that I remember. So I feel like there's so much more that I could provide here in this long format, as well as just the day-to-day. I'm so excited about vlogs and just showing you guys a little bit more about my life. That's like, I'm super excited about that. This is something that I've wanted to do for a while. Sometimes you just gotta hop on the horse. It's just, I think the new year, I'm just trying to hold myself more accountable than I already am because I do work really hard and I make a lot of content and I'm very consistent, but I want to throw this into the routine as well so that I continue to make long form content with you all. I know with a lot of the changes going on in the United States, a lot of book talkers are moving to Bookstagram and moving to booktube. So I'm also excited to see a lot of the friends that I've made over the last 5 years in this place as well, and to help build community. I know there's a lot of discourse about the differences between the platforms and, you know, newer people and how some places are more problematic than others. But at the end of the day, we're all readers. We all love to read. We love stories. And I think that the community and empathy that we get from reading, we should, extend that to each other as well, and try to just make the bookish space in general as unproblematic and welcoming as possible. And I'm just so excited for that. I am a millennial that grew up in the 90s. I was a military brat. I moved around a lot. It was very hard for me to put myself out there and make new friends every 2 to 3 years. So I found solace and friendship in the stories that I was reading. I literally used to get in trouble, and my punishment was to put my books down and go outside. That's how often I spent reading books as a child. I love stories, and I just love with novels and fantasy and sci-fi in particular, the immersion. I love the escape, to be honest. I went through some things as a kid, and reading was my solace, and throughout life, that has not changed. Even in the most heart-wrenching stories, there's always at least one part of that world that I wish I could take back with me into ours. And it's just so comforting. I just love reading so much. It's my favorite thing to do. I only read as many books as I do in a year because it's my primary hobby. I also enjoy like film and TV, but not nearly as much as reading because it's just the immersion. Like, I am a very visual thinker. Like, I know some people read and they're just reading I know I'm transported. My eyes forget that I'm reading. I am in the world. I am seeing through the eyes of the characters, or I am a fly on the wall if it's a different type of narration. And I just enjoy it so much. It feels like VR to me. It's always felt that way to me. I love reading about other people's perspectives and understanding things that maybe I didn't understand before, growing as a person, growing in empathy, growing as an advocate. And all around, all of those things combined just make me feel so cozy and good inside. My very first fantasy series I started reading in the third grade. It's so funny that, he who shall not be named, now it's she who shall not be named. But it was the Harry Potter series, and this is going to be my first and last time ever mentioning it on this channel, only because of the book tag. And I would genuinely want to give you guys a true answer. When I was in the third grade, we received the first book as a Christmas present from my teacher. She had a big old box, brought it in, and I was so excited to always read books, but normally when you were given, books in elementary school, you had to give them back because it was like the classroom set. But she spent money out of her own pocket to gift us these books. And I fell in love, and I can still remember the feeling that I felt first reading those stories. And it's so funny because even though I feel like those stories are somewhat tainted now, I am constantly recreating those feelings with new fantasy series. I'm constantly chasing that high, and this is actually a very healthy high to chase, so that's a plus as well. But yeah, and after that, I jumped into a series of unfortunate events. I asked my mom what her favorite books were when she was reading. She grew up in Jamaica, so I was reading the books that were in her British-inspired libraries, which were Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys. What else did I read growing up? Then I started reading about vampires, and I loved Arthurian legend. I empathized with Morgan Le Fay. I loved going to the Scholastic Book Fair. Now, we didn't have a lot of money growing up. I was part of a military family, but I was always given enough to purchase at least one book at the Scholastic Book Fair. And it was my favorite thing. It was so exciting to me. I loved the accelerated reading points. I loved getting the Pizza Hut. I loved the library. I resonated with Belle from The Beauty and the Beast so much because she went to the library. He was like, you just were here yesterday. That was literally me. I would go to the library from the moment they opened to the moment that they closed. I would read as many books as I could while I was there. I would take the books with me that I didn't finish, and then I'd come back the next day and get some more. I just have so many fond memories in these stories, in these places filled with stories. And I feel so profoundly blessed that I was brave enough to put myself out there, and now I'm in a position where I get to do that, and I get to talk about stories. And I've met some of my favorite authors, and it's literally my childhood dream. It's my childhood dream, and I'm living it, and that is so heartwarming to me. And it's just like it's constantly like feeding my drive, and it makes pulling up this camera and turning on my mic and talking to you guys one of the easiest things of my day to do. Some of them are mutuals that I've met in other places, but I love Eden's Archives, Kimmy Reads or Kimmy's Books. I really enjoy the critical analysis of Marina's here as well. When it comes to the content that I choose to consume, I always want as much as possible. So like going back to like watching director's cuts of my favorite films and all the deleted scenes, even the ones that aren't completely like finished all the way, when they were animated, looking at the, the sketch storyboards, I want as much as I can get from the stories that I love. That's why I love booktube and book talk and bookstagram, because depending on who you're watching, you're going to get so much of those things from different people. I love critical analysis, even if it's on books that I love, that I don't want to hear criticism for, because I enjoy the different perspectives and maybe seeing things in a different light that I didn't see it, because my love, made it difficult for me to look at it a little bit more critically. I also just love being able to see author interviews. I want to do more of that in 2025 as well. Learn a little bit more about the process, or how these stories came to be, how they first thought of these ideas, and what their process is as far as writing and bringing these stories to life. So I just enjoy all of this so much, and I just want to be a part of that more. I feel, as a type A eldest daughter and a millennial, I really don't have any issues with getting the work done. Like, my brain's going to make me get the work done. What I find challenging sometimes is stepping outside of that and just having fun. So one thing that I'm trying to do more of is I am not sticking to a TBR based on the content that I want to make. I am going to read what I want to read, and then the content will come second, in most cases anyway. Like, I'm still going to do like my wrap-ups, and you will do reading vlogs and stuff like that. But as far as what I'm reading, unless it's like particular books that are coming out, or obligations that maybe I've made with publishers or with authors, I'm going to try to do my best to be a true mood reader. So that's my biggest challenge. And also with long form content being new to me, I've been doing short form content for 5 years. I am struggling a little bit, even right now with this video, with just talking, but like trying to make this a longer video, because I'm so used to condensing my thoughts and making sure that it's 90 seconds if it's on Instagram, 60 seconds if it's a YouTube short. And yeah, but I think just being more of myself and letting you guys know a little bit more of like my, top of mind, off the wall thoughts will help with that. But that comes with comfort. And honestly, with filming this video, we're getting there. So I appreciate you. If you're here still watching, thank you. I'm trying my best, but I want this to feel as easy as everything else that I've been doing for the last 5 years. That's going to be my biggest challenge, is just making this as easy as breathing. So I started documenting my reading in 2020. At the height of the pandemic, I started reading a lot more books than I had in previous years. My youngest was just getting to be a toddler, so I had a lot more time for myself. I said I had seen somebody doing book content on YouTube a decade ago, and it was always in the back of my mind. And then I just said, I'm just going to put myself out there and I'm just going to do it. So I started doing like the little skits and stuff, and then I once again had to get out of my comfort zone. I was like, you have to talk in front of the camera. You have to use your own voice. You can't just lip sync. And that was honestly a hurdle. And I was just like, oh, this is so nerve-wracking. I don't want to do this. But clearly I did. And with anything that you feel uncomfortable doing, the more you do it, the more you feel comfortable. I just have to keep reminding myself of that, even as I enter this booktube journey here in 2025. And then eventually I started to grow, and I started a book club, and then I started to work with publishers and go on bookish trips. It's just so funny how life works, because I thought I wanted to be a writer. I loved reading. I was always writing short stories as a kid. My teachers, unless they were haters, were always complimenting my writing. I was either being complimented and saying how much of a great writer I was, or I was being accused of plagiarism. There was no in between. After I had my second child, I took some time off to write, and I actually have a couple of work in progresses in the works, but never did I think that I would be on this side of publishing. I always thought that I was going to be the creator. I guess in some ways I still am. But I love being able to support authors and shed light on diverse stories. And that's not anything that I thought that I was going to do, but that's just how life played out. It's crazy because you're on this journey of life and you think that you're just like trucking along, but little do you realize that life is preparing you for things. Like when I was in college, I was a marketing major and I hated it. I hated it. It stressed me out. So I was just like, I don't know what to do. So my advisor was just like, well, choose English because you can be an English major and then you can do whatever you want afterwards. You know, if you decide to go to grad school. So I was like, okay, I'll be, an English major. And then I had to choose what my track was. And I was just like, well, I've always written. I'll do writing. I feel like, especially in adolescence, you get to a certain level of being jaded and you think that your dreams are not going to come true. So I promise you, me being a writer, me working in publishing, being a book influencer had absolutely nothing to do with the reason I chose English as my major in college. But it prepared me. After I finished school, I just got a regular job. I didn't even get a job in the publishing industry. I was working at Bank of America and I was selling stuff, and then I ended up working in insurance selling stuff, and then I worked at iHeartMedia selling stuff, and I hated it. It was the most uncomfy feeling ever, but I feel like life was informing me to talk about these books, to feel comfortable in uncomfortable situations and speak to the value of things and be able to articulate that to an audience. I didn't do any of that on purpose. I was just trying to find a job. I was just trying to pay my bills. But yeah, and I feel like all of those things brought me to where I am now, and I couldn't be more grateful. I read in my bed, I read in the kitchen, I read in the car, I read walking to the mailbox, I read everywhere. And it's always been that way. Like I remember when I was a kid, I would walk around with my books, and I was so engrossed in a book one time. As I'm walking through the grocery store with my family, I start to hear like giggles behind me, and I'm just like, I look up from my book, and the man that I was following was not my family. It was not my father. It was a random person. I was like, I mean, honestly, it wasn't safe. But thank God my parents were like paying attention to me, and like they were the ones giggling because I was just like so engrossed in the story that I was like following a stranger. Yeah, I've just always loved stories. Yeah, I read anywhere. I read everywhere. I have my Kindle with me absolutely everywhere I go. If I have a purse that's not big enough to fit my Kindle, I don't own that purse. It has to fit. And now that I'm like a collector of stories, I won't bring my physical copies because I'm terrified that they'll get messed up in my bag. So I have to bring my Kindle. I usually have a few books that I'm reading at a time. If I'm lucky, if I've got it like that at the moment, I might have the ebook, the physical book, and the audiobook, and I'm bouncing back and forth. That's not always the case because that costs money. Usually I have a book that I'm doing on audio, I have a book that I have a physical copy of, and I have an ebook as well for late at night or when I'm on the go. But yeah, it's definitely a combination of those three. And sometimes I'll be reading back to back to back to back books, ebooks, just because it's more convenient. And I honestly do feel like I read faster that way, because I'm less distracted with like the weight of the book or like flipping the pages. But every now and then I have to have a book in my hands. I have to turn the pages. It's like a comfort thing. So I read across genre, but the majority of the books that I read are fantasy and sci-fi, historical fiction, some romance, usually one of those stories with a romantic subplot. But every once in a while, I like a little palate cleanser because I could knock out romances like they're nothing. And then I'm always like, why don't I read more romance? And then I read 10 sci-fi or 10 fantasy, and then I'm like, why don't I read more romance? It's just like, it's a cycle. I've been getting more into nonfiction. I love a retelling. I love mythology. And I love when all of those things are together. And this just automatically makes me think about Olivia Blake because she tends to do a mix of those things. I know this isn't on the tag, but I'm going to just drop some of my favorite authors. I already mentioned Olivia Blake, Rebecca Roanhorse, R.F. Kuang, P. Djeli Clark, Zonda Lee, Ava Reed. I just started my Robin Hobb journey. Oh my God. So good. So hurtful. I like to be hurt, apparently. That's one thing that I'll say. Maybe that's another reason why I love sci-fi and fantasy. I love to get my feelings hurt. I love to empathize. I love to want to fight somebody for somebody else. I think because as a child and as an adult sometimes, tend to be, I want to be an unproblematic gal. So I don't always fight the battles that I should fight. So I like to fight them mentally with the characters in the books that I'm reading. Love Dark Academia. I can't believe I didn't mention that. Dark Academia is, I think that stems from the first series that I mentioned earlier in the video, and that school setting. It's just always done something for me. And I love reading a book where I feel like I'm learning. So I love R.F. Kuang. I'm never taking notes, but I always feel like I like when I feel like I should. N.K. Jemisin. Oh my gosh, N.K. The 5th season was rough, but I loved it. I also enjoyed the Inheritance trilogy by her as well, because I was like, you're telling me that this whole little dark daddy thing, N.K. Bindum that? N.K. Dark Daddies? I liked that. That was a nice, pleasant surprise. I read that this past year. Octavia Butler, Kindred is one of my favorite books. Legendborn. Like I told you earlier, I love Arthurian legend. I love stories about black girl magic, and those two things combined, with our powers combined, Tracy, you have my heart. I also need to read a little bit more horror. I don't like gore. I don't like dark romance. I don't want to say murder, but a little like supernatural horror, a little magical realism with some horror. I'll take that. But if you've gotten to this far in the video, once again, I appreciate you. Thank you for being on this journey of this video with me as I'm trying to get comfortable doing this. I invite you to subscribe so that you can see my new videos that will be coming out. My intention is to have at least weekly wrap-up / vlogs where I'm showing you what I'm reading throughout the week, and then at the end of that week, giving you the rundown of what I read, how I feel about those things. I want to do monthly wrap-ups as well, and I'm not sure if I'm just going to do that rapid fire, if I'm going to do reviews. I don't know if I'm going to do long-form individual reviews, because I do short-form reviews for each book that I'm reading on Book Talk. Maybe I will. Maybe that'll change. But yeah, I don't want to do too much too fast. I want to get comfortable with the things that I'm doing and then go from there. But definitely look out for weekly vlogs. And I'm also saying this to hold myself accountable. I'm talking to you, me. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited for this journey that we'll go on, this quest, this saga. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.